Good evening. I'm Diana Skaya, and you're watching World News Tonight live from Warsaw. She did it. Iga Świątek is the Wimbledon champion. A final like this hasn't happened in 114 years. Now we'll have more on that in just a moment, but first let's take a look at tonight's headlines. Smoke over Lviv. Russian strikes hit near the Polish border. Slovakia demands guarantees in EU-Russian gas exit plan. And new details emerge in the Air India crash that killed 260 people on board. She's young, fierce, and now officially a Wimbledon champion. Polish tennis player Iga Świątek has taken the tennis world by storm, triumphing at this year's Wimbledon final on Saturday, marking the first time in 114 years when a player won the tournament with a 6-0, 6-0 result. At just 24, Świątek becomes the first Polish woman to claim the prestigious trophy. Alex Sumliński takes a closer look at the journey of Poland's brightest sports star.
Iga Świątek started playing tennis at the age of 5, and her talent was visible from early on when she was one of 12 children chosen out of 1,000 for a program called On the Lookout for Tennis Aces in 2007, says one of her first coaches.
You could see that she picked up on a lot of things very quickly. She was very coordinated. She would observe a lot of things, saw something somewhere, and because she had an older sister who played, she saw something somewhere. So from time to time, I'd see her playing something else, trying something new. She was a really talented girl, very agile, and she picked up everything quickly, both in terms of coordination and technique.
When they were small children, Zuzanna Kostiuk met Iga at the program and recalls that their first matches against each other were played with sponge balls.
Iga won her first Roland Garros in 2020, and suddenly people were writing to me saying, Zuzia, they're writing about you and Iga in Gazeta Wyborcza. The point was that Gazeta Wyborcza was looking for the first mention of Iga, and it was from the years when we played as kids, that she lost a match to a friend from the club, and everyone was like, wow, you beat Iga Świątek, and I was like, easy, we were just kids.
One of the biggest challenges for Iga had always been playing on grass, but that has changed, and on Saturday, Iga didn't lose even one game on the grass courts of Wimbledon.
You can see the new coach's stamp, so to speak. You can see that he's changed it up a bit, introduced some nuances. And we know that every coach, especially at this level, and every nuance is very important but hardly noticeable. But then it all starts to work.
Experts highlight that Iga is known for her powerful forehand, tactical intelligence, and calm demeanor on the court. Iga represents the new generation of champions.
Huge talent, but Iga is also a truly good person who doesn't go to any lengths to achieve her goals. She does her own thing, but it's all her work, and she's also incredibly resourceful. She's a truly kind, polite girl with a good upbringing, and I think that's a reflection of her overall upbringing in sports, and such a good person.
Poland's #1 tennis player now joins an elite group of women to have won Grand Slam tournaments on all 3 surfaces, that is grass, clay, and hard court. The Polish former world #1 did not drop a game in the women's singles final to claim her 6th Grand Slam title in 6 finals appearances. Alex Sumliński for TVP World.
And now on to news from Ukraine. Russian attacks on western Ukraine continued for a 3rd night in a row. Several waves of Russian drones and missiles targeted multiple locations across the country, including the cities of Lutsk, Chernivtsi, and Lviv. Let's now go live to our Ukraine correspondent, Oz Chatterjee, who is in Kyiv for the latest. Good evening, Oz. So what exactly is behind Russia's strategy here, now striking regions which were considered safe zones? What more details can you tell us of what took place?
Well, President Zelensky released a statement a short while ago, saying that Russia's intention is to strike terror into the hearts of Ukrainian cities, and that their tactic is to use more than 300 drones at a time, targeting various cities and regions. In the course of Friday night, Saturday morning, Russia launched 597 drones onto the territory of Ukraine, with 26 cruise missiles also launched by Russia. Now, unfortunately, in Chernivtsi, as you said, 2 people were killed, 38 injured across Ukraine. But these attacks, as you said, largely targeted Western Ukraine. Now, this also caused concern for the Polish government, who scrambled jets to make sure that their airspace was protected by the incoming Russian threat. No sign that any of those drones passed into Polish territory, but Lviv was hit in these attacks, which was very close to the Polish border. Now, President Zelensky has said that attacks have continued throughout the day, and he's called again for further sanctions to be put on countries purchasing Russian oil. Kyiv sees secondary sanctions as being very important to their strategy to weaken Russia's wartime economy. And President Zelensky again made a call for further support, saying war can only be stopped by force. We expect from our partners not just signals, but actions that will save lives. So another hint there that air defense is a really key priority for Kyiv going forward. Back to you, Diana.
And this says a U.S. envoy will be going and heading to Kyiv on Monday. We'll see how that unfolds. Thank you so much, Oz Katerji, coming to us live from Kyiv. Tensions remain high in Serbia as President Aleksandar Vučić visits the city of Novi Sad, his first official appearance there since a deadly train station collapse last year killed 16 people. Now, his visit was met with protests and road blockades as demonstrators continue calling for accountability and snap elections. The unrest has grown into a nationwide movement. Agata Dura reports.
Police blocked the road to prevent demonstrators from approaching Serbia's President Aleksandar Vučić.
President Vučić had to be kept away from ordinary citizens out of fear that they could confront him about the behavior of the regime. That is not how a democratic leader goes to meet their citizens.
The visit near Novi Sad was part of his tour of the works on the construction of a bridge over the Danube River. But addressing the burning issue, the ongoing protests against his government, was inevitable.
We were faced with the best organized colored revolution on European soil. A lot of money and good organization was invested in bringing down Serbia.
This is just a narrative that is being given by the President Vučić in order to appease the East. So Russia, China, countries that are sensitive to these words. So this is just a way to actually smear the national movement that is happening.
The movement is an expression of the Serbian society's dissatisfaction after the tragic event that took place on November 1st last year, when a train station canopy in Novi Sad collapsed, leading to 16 deaths in total. On Saturday, Vučić promised to visit Novi Sad soon. As of now, he only visited the second largest city in Serbia once, on November 5th last year, 4 days after the tragic event. Back then, he met with the police officers who worked on the site. The tragedy sparked nationwide protests.
The city of Novi Sad in Serbia ground to a halt on Saturday evening, with tens of thousands of protesters taking to the streets, blocking the city.
The demonstrators, mostly students, demanded both political and criminal accountability from President Vučić and his government, as well as snap elections. The protesters accused the politicians of corruption. In late January, the protests led then Prime Minister Miloš Vučević to say,
Moja poziva odluka da podnesem ostavku na mesto predsjednika Vlade Republike Srbije.
But Vučić sees no fault of his own or of his government.
I'm happy we managed to win in a democratic way without using force and responded to the blockaders' fierce attacks with only minimal physical pressure. Sometimes you have to choose whether to sacrifice democracy in the country. We didn't do that. We allowed much more freedom than the law requires, and I'm not unhappy about that.
But in fact, it is plain for all to see that that is not true. Student protesters have been beaten, they have been detained, violence has been used by police and para-police forces, And this repression has gathered speed since June 28, when there was a huge demonstration in Belgrade.
In last year's Freedom House Nations in Transit report, Serbia scored 43%, resulting in it being classified as a transitional or hybrid regime. This means a political system that combines authoritarian and democratic features. It may involve political repression alongside regular elections. For TVP World, I'm Agata Dura.
Slovakia is holding up the European Union's next sanctions package against Russia, but not because it opposes the measures, but because it wants guarantees in return. Prime Minister Robert Fico says his country won't be able to bear the cost of cutting off Russian gas alone. He warns the 2028 phase-out plan could hurt Slovakia's economy.
We are ready to support the 18th sanctions package, but in return, we expect the EU's support. This is the message coming from Bratislava on Saturday.
We want political commitments, guarantees from partners and the Commission that this problem will not remain only on Slovakia's back and that it will be a common European problem.
Slovakia has been holding up the sanctions package because it disagrees with a separate proposal from the European Commission to completely stop importing Russian gas by 2028.
And if on Tuesday we decide to support the 18th sanctions package, it will be on the assumption that we have at least agreed on something. This fight, ladies and gentlemen, cannot be won 100-0. The Commission cannot win it 100-0 against Slovakia. Germany cannot win it 100-0 against Slovakia either. But we cannot win it 100-0 either.
The country still relies on Russian gas and fears cutting it out entirely could lead to energy shortages, a rise in prices and transit fees, or even legal backlash from Russia's energy giant, Gazprom. The EU's plan to ban Russian gas doesn't need unanimity, but the latest round of sanctions does. Slovakia, though not against the measures, is blocking them to push back on the energy ban. If Bratislava lifts its veto, the sanctions could be approved on Tuesday. Fico said he spoke about it with his Polish and German counterparts on Friday, but didn't provide any details.
The population of the European Union has reached a record high of over 450 million people, but not due to birth rates, which have actually been falling across the bloc for more than a decade. The boost is almost entirely due to migration. Yet in countries like Poland, where the population is swiftly shrinking, migration remains quite a controversial topic. And Kazimierz Wyszak breaks it down in this next report.
There have never been more people living in the European Union than now, with more than 450 million inhabitants. But this new record wouldn't be possible without migration.
That's a net migration of 3 million. If it hadn't been for this, and indeed most significantly in the last 3 years, 4 to 5 million Ukrainians arriving in the EU, then the EU would have had a declining population.
EU countries have had more deaths than births year by year since 2012. But while the overall population is growing due to migration, there are rising concerns on the continent over its effects.
Mass migration will not cannot be a solution for population growth because it will lead to lack of cohesion of the population.
In Poland, a whopping 75% of the population is against welcoming migrants under the EU relocation scheme, according to an opinion poll from the beginning of 2025. And this is the direct result of these concerns. After recent reports of illegal migrants from mostly Middle Eastern countries like Afghanistan or Syria crossing into Poland from Germany, the Polish government reintroduced border checks.
We expected traffic to start forming because of these checks. On 2 or 3 border crossings, we have long waiting lines where you can expect to wait from 40 minutes to 2 hours.
Before these border checks, some Polish local residents took matters into their own hands and started illegally stopping cars, questioning their drivers. As tensions are on the rise, the Polish authorities are drawing a line in the sand.
We have the right to introduce border checks by appropriate state service and make sure that all immigrants are here legally. But there can be no agreement to the recent campaign of hatred and anti-Semitism.
Poland has the third worst population growth rate in all of the EU, tied with Estonia. But it doesn't look like migration will become a solution to the aging population anytime soon. For TVP World, I'm Kazimierz Łysiak.
A preliminary assessment into last month's Air India crash that claimed the lives of 260 people points to possible cockpit error. Investigators say both engines lost power moments after takeoff, likely due to fuel being cut off. Sonia Gatabishchan reports on the latest findings.
According to a Saturday report, both fuel control switches in the Air India plane, which crashed in June, switched from run to cut-off position, cutting engine fuel supply seconds after takeoff. Experts say the action could point to the pilot's responsibility.
In theory, the system design requires a manual intervention and selection, and it's not triggered by a software. So that emphasizes the deliberate action.
In the cockpit voice recording, one pilot is heard asking the other about the switch, followed by the other denying cutting it off. The Indian Civil Aviation Minister expressed confidence in India's pilots and urged the public to wait for the final report.
We care for the welfare and the well-being of our pilots also. So let's not jump to any conclusions at this stage. Let us wait for the final report.
For the relatives of the victims of the June 12 plane crash, moving forward, accountability is key.
We want the investigation to be neutral and the perpetrators to be punished. We have lost what we were destined to lose, but we want no one else to die due to such carelessness. We want the government to take all kinds of precautions so that people do not lose their family members to such incidents again.
All but one of the 242 people aboard the London-bound plane from Ahmedabad, India, were killed.
For some time, I thought I was also going to die. But when I opened my eyes, I realized I was alive, and I tried to unbuckle myself from the seat and escape from where I could. It was in front of my eyes that the air hostess and others died.
While the final report is still awaited, the allegations of the pilot's health condition and medical leave preceding the plane crash have prompted a discussion on the importance of pilots' fitness.
Of course, the physical and mental health of pilots is very important and will be thoroughly investigated in any accident case.
In 2015, a young co-pilot intentionally crashed a Germanwings aircraft into the French Alps, killing himself and 149 other people. Despite his friends recalling him as a positive spirit, the investigation found that he suffered from a psychiatric condition. For TVP World, I'm Sonia Gatabishchan.
U.S. President Donald Trump has announced 30% tariffs on the European Union. Goods imported from the bloc will face the new rate starting August 1, according to a statement published on his social media platform. Now, the decision comes after months of stalled negotiations over a broader U.S.-EU trade comprehensive agreement, including zero-for-zero tariffs on industrial goods, but talks failed to deliver. The move is part of a broader tariff wave rolled out by Trump earlier this week, targeting a number of countries, including Japan, South Korea, Canada, and Brazil, as well as a 50% duty on copper. The U.S. president also warned that if the EU retaliates, the United States will raise tariffs even further. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen issued a written statement saying the bloc remains ready to work towards an agreement, but is ready to take, quote, necessary steps to safeguard EU interests, including proportionate countermeasures. The world's largest medieval battle reenactment has once again brought history to life in northern Poland on the historic field of Grunwald. It was there on July 15, 1410, that allied Polish and Lithuanian forces triumphed over the Teutonic Order, halting its expansion and securing the early Polish state. Today, the site draws thousands of enthusiasts who bring the glorious past to life. Karolina Szaplan has more.
The allied Polish-Lithuanian forces have been preparing for this battle since the very morning, just as they might have over 600 years ago.
For any typical rite, we have to clean the horse. After that, we cover the horse with our marks, helts.
You have to be dressed from toe to your head in full clad armor. You put on a gamberzin, which is light padding. You put then on full steel, which is technically more early 15th century. This was like the peak of armor at this time. And you always have to have someone else to help you put everything on.
These days at Grunwald, women are stepping onto the battlefield too.
I think that right now we're equals, men and women, and I believe that sometimes women can be even more stronger.
Behind me, banners are gathering. In 1410, over 90 banners were fielded by the Polish-Lithuanian Allied forces, perhaps over 40,000 men. The Teutonic Order Knight fielded fewer soldiers, but they were better equipped and more disciplined. Today, this side has drew over 1,000 reenactors, brandishing lances, longswords and maces, clad in surcoats and chainmail. According to medieval chronicler Jan Długosz, the battle began with a solemn singing of Bogu Rodzica, Poland's oldest known hymn. And here at Grunwald, that tradition still echoes through time. And although the outcome of this battle is well known to every Polish school child, for the thousands who gathered here today, well, they're clearly loving it. And not just for the show, which is free to attend, but for the shared feeling of the glorious past and to celebrate the community of reenactors, the community that keeps the past alive. For TVP World, I'm Karolina Shapland.
Western Ukraine is under fire yet again, with Russian missiles striking cities like Lviv and Chernivtsi in a new wave of massive drone attacks. Far from the front lines, they're raising new concerns about the evolving nature of Moscow's war tactics. Meanwhile, U.S. Envoy Keith Kellogg is set to visit Kyiv on Monday with a strong message backing a proposed 500% tariff hike on Russian goods. Joining me now to discuss all this and more is Stephen Moore, founder of the Ukraine Freedom Project. Stephen, welcome. I'm so glad to have you with us here on TVP World this evening. Let me go straight into it and just ask you about the latest Russian attacks, which have continued for a third night in a row now, that have reached western part of Ukraine, targeting, like I just mentioned, Chernivtsi, Lviv, Lutsk. Why are we seeing this sudden shift in Russia's targeting strategy? What is their goal behind this exactly?
Well, this is not a military strike, and Vladimir Putin does not do military strikes. He does terror strikes. And so what he's trying to do is trying to kill as many civilians as he can in order to get Ukraine to capitulate. And, you know, I left Ukraine on Sunday of last week, and I've been in the U.S. for a week. And I was there for last Thursday's attack, which was 537 drones and missiles, at the time a new record. And you have to recognize that this is all calculated, because Vladimir Putin got off the phone with Donald Trump and an hour later launched a bunch of missiles and drones into Kyiv. And so Putin is displaying his lack of respect for Donald Trump, which is something that is animating Donald Trump to be more helpful to Ukraine.
So, you just mentioned Donald Trump. Let me go then straight into asking you about Kellogg's visit to Ukraine on Monday. He said that he supports an American bill that's going to impose 500% tariffs on Russia. What is he hoping to achieve with this? What do you think is going to change? And is Trump himself, what's making him change his mind?
Well, here's what's happened. You've got a lot of really positive signals that, there was a guy, Albert Jacoby, who is a senior person in the Defense Department, and he unilaterally just cut off weapons to Ukraine. And Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense Department, signed off on it. And then when it reached the White House, Trump says, wait. what are we doing here? I didn't sign off on this. And at that same time, Putin is, thumbing his nose at Trump by sending weapons, sending drones and missiles into Ukraine. So Trump, I think, is fed up with Putin. There's been an education process with Donald Trump. He had the belief that Putin of today is the Putin of 2019 when he was last in office, and they had a relationship that he believed would allow him to solve the Ukraine war easily. But it's a lot more complicated, and Donald Trump is figuring that out. And, the Chinese are helping. The Chinese recently said that it's not in their interest for Russia to lose the war in Ukraine, or they just like it being there because it diverts American attention away from China. So we're learning all these things. Donald Trump is learning all these things, and he's taking the rational action.
Stephen, but let me ask you this. I mean, say this new deal goes through, right? This new bill, goes through. Do you think that, how realistic is it for it that that these sanctions are actually going to be able to shift the Kremlin's tactics?
Putin is in trouble in a bunch of different ways. His 3-day military operation is now a 3.5-year military operation. They're losing, according to The Economist, a Russian soldier for every 9 acres of land that they take. And 9 acres is, I don't know how to put that in kilometers, but it's a very tiny fraction of a kilometer. So what we're seeing is that Putin is a loser. Donald Trump doesn't like losers, and so Trump is gravitating against Russia.
Stephen, I just want to ask you a question. Going back to Russia's latest attacks, of course, on those regions in Western Ukraine. We had Poland really, scramble fighter jets as well. Do you think that Russia is actually testing NATO's red lines?
Oh, absolutely. You look, he's doing the same thing to the Baltics as well. There was a Shahed drone that fell into the Baltics. I think Estonia, I can't remember. Finland is seeing this sort of probing as well. And, Russia is on a war footing. And they are, I don't know about Poland, but here in America, you pick up something and it doesn't say made in Russia on the bottom. Russia doesn't really make things. Russia pumps oil and gas out of the ground, and gold and diamonds, and they make weapons of war. So it's not like, Putin's going to stop the war in Ukraine and then go back to making televisions and computers, because Russia doesn't make televisions and computers. So they're geared up for war. They're a gas station with an army. And so Putin will be satisfied until he regains all the former countries of the Soviet Union.
Well, we'll also see how this trip with Keith Kellogg will unfold in Ukraine. Thank you so much, Stephen Moore, founder at the Ukraine Freedom Project, for all your input with us here this evening.
Thank you. Always great to be with you.
And that's all from me here from World News Tonight on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. Thanks for watching, and do stay with us for more news, features, and exclusive commentary on TVP World.